Hi, my name is Adam Alouche. I'm the director of test prep at ESM Prep College Matchpoint, and I wanted to talk a little bit about today about what is really behind test optional policies in college admissions. They have been in the news for the last 4 years. Ever since COVID started in 2020, became really the base policy for all colleges. When students couldn't test after March 2020, they couldn't test in test centers and they couldn't do it safely. All colleges adopted a test optional policy, which means you can submit scores if you have them, if you think they're an asset to your application. But if you don't have scores or you don't think they're an asset, you won't be disadvantaged in any way if you do not submit test scores. Now, that policy went into effect for fall 2020 and has stayed for the large part up to this year. And what we saw from the college side is that they got a ton of more applications because a lot of students said, oh, I can apply to all these reach schools because the only thing that I wasn't meeting the grade for was the test scores. And so now that I don't need to submit that, let me take a shot. What's another essay to write? What's another $90 to pay when I might have a shot at getting into an Ivy League school now or a top 25 school now with a 3.8 GPA? And so schools saw 5 to 20 to 30% increase in their applications, which meant a ton of application revenue coming into the admissions offices. Because they got so many more applications, they saw admit rates plummet at a lot of places because they weren't accepting more students. There's only a finite amount of students you can take at every school. There's only a finite amount of students you can house. And so we saw admit rates getting much lower, schools looking more selective. And students that were submitting scores were submitting great scores, right? Why would you submit this score if it wasn't an asset to your application? And so the average test scores that schools were reporting were going up exponentially. We saw schools going up 40, 50, 60, 100 points in their average or in the median test scores for their incoming freshman class. And so this proved to be a win-win-win for college admissions offices. Their donors and their alumni were super happy with them because they were looking more selective. They were climbing up ranks. Their average test scores were going up. They were bringing in more money. And so it persisted for years, even when it became safe to test. A lot of places are still continuing with test optional policies. Now, the $1 million question is, or for many of you, the $250,000 question is it truly test optionable? Is this equitable for my student? Right? Because there is a logical flaw there. If you're saying it's an advantage to some people if they submit it, that's a relative disadvantage to other students if they don't submit it. That's, as somebody that tutors the LSAT, that's a logical flaw. And so the answer to that question is it really does depend. It depends on where you're from, depends on where you go to school, what your socioeconomic class is, because you're really not competing with an entire applicant pool when you're looking for admission. You're competing with the kids at your school and the kids from similar socioeconomic backgrounds from schools around yours. And so if you're from an elite private school and all of the kids that are applying to the same school as you are submitting test scores and you don't have one, you are absolutely at a disadvantage. So we really recommend if you're able to test and test well, you should test because it's going to really, really help you at many schools. We're also seeing a return to test required. We're seeing a lot of Ivies lead the way in requiring test scores starting in the fall of 2025. So there's going to be a real moment of change here. The Ivy League schools are a real indicator of trends that are about to start. So if you're a sophomore right now, if you're a freshman right now, you really need to check admissions requirements over the next 6, 12, 18 months because the schools that you're looking at right now that are test optional very well may return to requiring tests in the fall of 2026 or beyond.